Hello everyone, this is continuation of ChatOps series. In this episode I will be talking about StackStorm mainly. In the first episode I was showing how to integrate Slack and Airboat to run some Docker containers. And this time we'll be doing something more complicated and using StackStorm to communicate to Jenkins and run the Jenkins jobs from there. The thing that works as a bridge between Airboat and StackStorm is a project called StackStorm. It's working as an interface, passing the commands from Airboat to StackStorm and publishing the aliases for actions from StackStorm to Airboat. And it's not a coincidence that I'm using StackStorm here. It has a built-in support for ChatOps scenarios, mainly for Hubot. But using the projects I mentioned, we can do it also with Airbot. It's also engine for if this then that rules, and there's a tons of plugins that you can use to create different flows between different parts of your system. And May 2020, the company that was mainly working on StackStorm open sourced the enterprise version of StackStorm, and this means that soon you should be able to use enterprise airbag, LDAP, workflow editor and SSO functionalities on the community edition. As always, you can find all the materials on my GitHub and the link is placed below the video. So let's start with the configuration of Airbot. It would be good to have virtual environment for the stuff we are doing here. I already prepared one and I'm just activating it. There is also requirements file in the repository. I already installed all the dependencies, but I'm doing it just for reference. Next step will be the Airbot configuration file. It didn't change that much. The main part of the file is pretty the same. So I'm using the token for the Slack, also defining the paths for the data and other persistent data. Here I'm also defining the plugin indexes. I somehow couldn't make it work with the default value, which is pointing to this HTTPS URL. So I just copied the content into the file and placed it in the Airbot directory. Then I'm also setting logging level to debug to see all the details of what's going on. And at the bottom there is a configuration for StackStorm itself. So I'm just pointing to the StackStorm service, which is not there yet, but I just want to have everything in place already. It will be working on the local host. And here I'm also providing the credentials that Airbot can use to communicate to StackStorm. Since this is the fresh directory that I'm using, I also need to create the data folder, which is the place for all the Airbot data. And afterwards we can just start the Airbot. It should already connect to the same application that I was using in the previous video. I just need to create new channel just to have all the things for this video in one place. I will skip adding any people, but I will add the DOS bot to this channel. And just checking if everything is fine by executing help command. So next piece of the puzzle is the StackStorm. We need to install it on the existing Airbot. First we'll start with web server plugin, which will allow exposing some endpoints for StackStorm so that the StackStorm can communicate towards Airbot. I'm just installing the plugin using repos install, and the plugin is now installed. Having all of this, I can now start StackStorm. I will be using Docker delivery. It's the easiest way to have StackStorm in place. There is a repo called st2docker. I just need to clone it and just start the containers using Docker Compose. Can now check if the StackStorm is in place and just try to log in there. The next step is installation of StackStorm into the Airboat, and it's done exactly the same way by executing repos install command. And since it's installed, all the other steps I will be just doing directly in the command line. First, what we need to do is just to exec into st2 client to make some configuration and change some of the files. I will start with ChatOps rule file. As I said, StackStorm is easily configurable with errbot, but in our case we'll be using Airboat, so I need to create a new rule just for Airboat. Just writing to the file, and I will copy the content from the repository. And this is the file. The most important part is the trigger route. So we are saying that it should be triggered via route that is called Airbot, which is like a pipe of all the things going out of Airbot towards StackStorm. And the next thing is to edit the actions that are shipped with ChatOps pack. We'll be using two actions, post message and post result, and both needs to be changed also to match the route called Airbot. So in fact the change is really tiny, it's just changing the default name of the route to Airbot, and that's it. And same thing for the post result action. And again, route is set to Airbot. Okay, now let's create example alias, which is what is exposed towards Airbot and what we will see in a Slack channel. So I'll create just a very simple run local alias that will just execute the command on localhost. And again, I'm copying it from the repository. And after all those changes, we need to reload the StackStorm so that it fetches all the changes that I have just made. Somehow I couldn't make it work without restarting the Airbot, so I just shut it down and starting again. And afterwards we should see the new command available in our channel. So I'm just using st2 help, and it's viewing all the available commands. And there is one st2 run, which is reflecting the action alias that we just created. So let's run it. I'll just pass the date command and we should see the actual date returned as a result. Now there's the very interesting article about how to troubleshoot rules in StackStorm. It has a lot of useful hints, but also shows how the flow in StackStorm really looks like. And I will try to show you at least part of it, just to make you a bit more comfortable with what is going on in StackStorm. So in history there are two entries now, core local execution, so exactly the command we wanted to run. And if you go to actions and see the local action, you can see that the parameters are matching the ones we defined in the action alias file. And in executions, we are now seeing the execution that was just triggered. You can view some details about it. And it's pretty the same for the ChatOps post result. So this is what was triggered after getting the call for execution, and it's part of ChatOps pack this time. And again, in executions, we can see that it was really run. And the thing that connects those two things together is rule. So rule is just defining if what happens, then what should be done. And this is exactly how StackStorm describes or keeps their rules. So we had a trigger that came after the execution was done, and this trigger starts the action ChatOps post result, which is then just sending some message to our channel. And in enforcement, we can see that it really happened. We have some more info about how and with what parameters it was executed. Now we can move to our ultimate goal, which is running jobs in Jenkins. So first I will start the Jenkins also in Docker. The important part is that I'm placing it in the st2 Docker private network and giving it network alias Jenkins. This is all just for convenience to allow reaching the both sides of the communication just by the names of containers or by the names that we are assigning here. So we won't need to know any IPs or anything like this. Okay, some quick checkup if the Jenkins is really starting. It should be there on port 8080. And yeah, there is a sign that it's being started. We also need password that is placed in the logs. This is for the initial configuration that I will do here really quick. And we are ready. So one more thing that needs to be done is I need to install one extra plugin. This will be used to communicate Jenkins with StackStorm after the execution of jobs. And the plugin name is Outbound Webhook. For some reason, the newest version is not working with the Jenkins from Docker. It's connected with the Java version. So I found the previous version of this plugin, and here I'm uploading it manually. And on install plugins, we should see the Outbound Webhook plugin there in version 0.2.0. So let's now create some simple job that we will be executing from Slack. Let's call it test job. And we are using freestyle project. So we want to have this job parameterized. Let's have one parameter called command. and the default value will be date. And the whole pipe will be just executing this command, nothing more, nothing less, just to have some simple pipeline to execute. And as a post-build step, we can now point to StackStorm web container, which is exposing webhook and that will be accepting all the updates from Jenkins. So it will be st2web API version 1 webhooks /Jenkins. I will explain how to make this path named Jenkins. But first I need to also add the API key to allow authentication from Jenkins towards StackStorm. So again, in command line we can create new API key. And we'll add some comment. So now we need to copy the key and paste it in Jenkins. We want to have notifications about success, but you can also use it for starting the job and job failures. So now let's save the job. And try a single run to confirm that everything is working. And we have a first run of our newly created job, and as expected it returned the current working directory. So to save you some time, I've placed all the needed files in a separate repository. Also, this is the way how StackStorm handles the packages of aliases, actions and rules, and you can install it directly from Slack using pack install command. So our pack is now successfully deployed. And as you can see in packs directory, we have new directory for our DOS pack. And inside there is rules and aliases. In rules I added a webhook rule. The rule is executed when there is an event of value success in the body of the request that it receives from Jenkins. And as an action it is just posting message with the content Jenkins jobs succeeded. And in trigger you can see the Jenkins URL. This is exactly how we expose this path over the StackStorm, and this is why we are passing it in the Jenkins post build action. And another file is the action alias. It is also quite simple. I'm just saying that there should be a command that will build particular project with particular parameters. And the name of those placeholders is quite important because it corresponds to what is configured in Jenkins actions. But before that we need to first install the Jenkins pack to have the support for all those actions. As you can see, StackStorm comes with a lot of predefined packs, and they are kept as StackStorm Exchange repository, and there is a lot of different packs that you can use almost right away. So the pack is installed, as we can see. And we should now have some new available actions. Going to the Jenkins part, there is a build job. And as you can see, there is a project parameter, same as parameters parameter. So this is exactly what we are using in our action alias that I've created. One last thing that needs to be done is we need to configure Jenkins pack, because until now StackStorm doesn't completely know how to connect to Jenkins. So we'll pass the URL of Jenkins. And some credentials. We don't want to view it. And we want to save it. And we should be ready to run the command from Slack. Now, just for test, we can run the action manually by passing all the parameters from StackStorm web UI. And in Jenkins, we need to relogin. But here we should see the next execution of our job. And everything is fine. And since we created the webhook already and configured it properly, we see that even though we triggered it manually from StackStorm, the post message was executed, and we should see the Jenkins job succeeded also in Slack, which is there. So now we can just run st2 help once again, and as you can see, there is a DOS pack with new command available, and we can run it now. st2 build test job with parameters command. And yeah, we got notification that Jenkins job was triggered and that it's already successful. And in Jenkins you can see that there is another execution. That's it. Thanks for watching.